She will be amazingly effective. She's been at the highest level of the US policy, ambassador to the UN. She knows all the players. She's a Pulitzer Prize winner. And as Joe Biden said, she's a voice of conscience. She has moral clarity. And Joe Biden said she will lead America making development, the world's poor countries, a core pillar of all American US foreign policy.
And for the first time, whoever runs US aid will also sit on the National Security Council. Why is this significant?
Well, this is the untold story. We all have focused on Joe Biden's climate change convictions, saying, oh dear, what does this mean for Australia? Are they going to put pressure on us? We equally should be focusing on Joe Biden's commitment around aid and development. And the National Security Council is just a sign of that. Biden is saying, aid's not just the right thing to do morally, help poor people. It is the smart thing to do because it is soft power. When you cut aid, you need more bullets, more guns, because that's a hard last resort power. Aid is fundamental to security. So that's the message coming out of the Biden administration.
A real contrast to the previous administration. You've welcomed the $500 million commitment by Australia to vaccinate the entire Pacific. Is this enough of a contribution?
I think it's really significant. Look, when you realise that the wealthy world, of which Australia's part, is only 16% of the population of the world, but has over 60% of the vaccines already. When you realise that poor nations are missing out because pharmaceutical companies are selling to those countries where they can make the most profit. COVID doesn't end for any of us until it ends for all of us. We are utterly interdependent, equally vulnerable with this virus. What the Morrison government has done, I think, is really significant, and they should be really blowing their trumpet, saying to other nations, stop just buying it up for yourselves, vaccinating rich, young, wealthy Westerners, when first we should be vaccinating poor people, but particularly health workers in poor countries. The Morrison government has shown leadership here.
And there appears to be a substantial shift towards foreign aid spending by the Morrison government. Why do you think that is?
Well, we've come to full circle, and I hope it continues. Prime Minister Morrison, in his maiden speech, said he was going into Parliament to increase aid, to stop starving African kids dying. That's what he said in his maiden speech. Sadly, then, he was in a cabinet that cut aid from $5 billion to $4 billion, dissolved Australian aid, AusAid as it was called, as a standalone department. So Samantha Power, USAID, we don't even have AusAid as a standalone department here. Now, that original maiden speech, Morrison, is coming back to the fore. And we've seen an increase in aid, of course, driven by security concerns, the Chinese and the Pacific and Southeast Asia. But I really welcome this, and I think they're to be commended that they're reconstructing aid.
What should Australia's commitment be to foreign aid going forward when coronavirus is successfully controlled?
We need to understand that foreign aid actually is part of our security. It's part of our future markets. Poor people lifted out of poverty buy our goods. We need to see where in the region where most of the world's poor live. They're a long way from America and Europe, but they're in Southeast Asia, the Asian region. These are our neighbours. We need to continue increasing aid.
Well, Tim, how do you think the pandemic has changed the way governments and indeed we as individuals care for others, especially our neighbours?
When I went to thank the Morrison ministers for increasing aid just before Christmas, they were saying to me with great surprise, we expected criticism from the Pauline Hansons, from the nativists who say, just look after us. We don't give a stuff about people overseas. They said with surprise, we've had none of that. These are Morrison government ministers. They asked me why. I said, I'll tell you why. Australians know we've dodged a bullet and we're grateful. We know that though our borders are shut, our hearts are not shut. And we know our security is only in COVID ending for all. That's why they're supporting you. And most of them said, oh, of course. I think the invisible virus that's biologically connected the whole world has changed our attitudes to aid and to our neighbours and to being a really generous neighbour.
Indeed. Tim Costello, thanks so much for sharing your views with us.
Thank you.